Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimple Limp, and I'm here with a special treat. One I am very excited to have to my table today because it is another in the long line of games by Mr. Gregory M. Smith. He has done one of my all-time recent favorites, American Tank Ace, but also classics like The Hunters, and then we have Atlantic Sentinels. This is the newest, and this is the flip side. Please do accept my apologies. The Gimpy family does now have a new dog, so he is a young pup, and you might occasionally hear him in the background as we train him not to bark in the house, especially when Daddy's finally got a second to film without kids crying in the background, and now I got a dog. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, on to what I was saying. Atlantic Sentinels is the flip side to The Hunters. And The Hunters, you played as a German submarine and you would go out into the Atlantic and try to sink all that Atlantic convoy shipping. Well, now you're doing the other side. Now you're the opposite. You are the escorts. Well, you're commanding the escorts. So you don't have just a single ship. You've got a selection of ships. And you are going to use these to try to protect that shipping. Now, it's same type of gameplay that we saw in the Hunters. So you're rolling to see what types of ships that are there, and that's the same here. So you're going to have small, large freighters, tankers, and the submarines are going to try to target those. But now you have to use your escorts to stop them. And a cool thing about this is that those two games can actually be combined and you can play them together, either as two-player or as a solitary game, and kind of combine that experience. I'm not going to get long-winded on it, and I actually don't have the Hunters, so I can't show you guys exactly how that works, but understand you can combine the aspect. I think it would be really cool to kind of play Hunters on hard mode, and by playing it you're doing your same missions, but instead of just doing the attack like you would normally in Hunters, you bring it in here and you actually try to beat those escorts and get in close to get your shots off. I think that would be a really cool game to play, and it would definitely be hard mode because the escorts here are bringing the fire. All right, so first off, let's talk components real quick for the game. This is Compass Games, so you know that the components are going to be good. There is a selection of hard and postcard, so these are mounted. These two here, the operations map and the escort map, are both mounted. The tactical display is cardstock. Then we have, as usual, our log sheet, and there is a buttload of these, and it doesn't take as long, so these are actually double-sided. So this, top to bottom, would be one full campaign if you survive through the whole thing. And then besides that, we also have our huge selection of player aids that always come with games of this nature for all the different charts and tables that you're going to have. Besides that, we do have a selection of assorted dice, 10-sided, 6-sided, and I believe it 20-sided as well. So a little bit of everything. And these are the actual Compass Game counters. That's hard to show you guys here, but I will get into it when I do my example of play. But these are the nice, thick ones from Compass Games that look really good when they're clipped. I wasn't actually going to clip them. I sat down and I just started clipping 1, 2. I was like, yeah, I'll get the ones that are going to be on film. And then by the time I was done, I clipped damn near all the counters. So when you start, you just can't stop because you don't want to have any that are not clipped, but they are the type of Compass Game counters that are die cut, but that when you clip them, they're like the best looking counters ever. So I definitely suggest clipping these. You don't have to. They don't look that jagged, but I would clip them. So besides the counters, the mounted boards, the player aids, we do also have this, and this I really like. It's a deck of cards that is our sequence of play. This is something they have done here recently. They did this with Western Front Ace, I do remember, and they are numbered up here in the top right, and you just scroll right through these as you're conducting your game. And then boom, red ones. These are when we're conducting our attacks. So they're even color-coded. Love it, love it, love it. These cards should be an automatic inclusion for any game of this type. Now, getting into the specifics of the gameplay itself. Games like this need choice. They have to have choice. If they don't have choice, then you're not really playing the game. You're just rolling the dice and seeing what happens. And I hate to say it, but that is something that some of the older games in the series suffered from. While I love Silent Victory, and I'm assuming the Hunters, because it should be just the same, but Silent Victory, other games like it, they had less choice when you're conducting your attack. So when you conduct your attack against that enemy shipping, instead of having huge amounts of things to do, you would basically decide maybe what type of torpedo you're firing and how many and at what range. And do you attack? Because a lot of times you don't want to attack. You want to attack at night or in the day. No, I think night's best. Yeah, night is the best for the submarine. But things like that, right? Do you pursue if you wounded a ship and you want to try to pick off a straggler or something like that? The choice wasn't as heavy. But as Gregory has made more and more and more of these games, he's added more and more choice into the game. I think American Tank Ace was really the pinnacle, the peak of it, where he had just oodles of choice coming out of it. Not just if you shoot, but what weapon you're shooting, what type of round you're shooting, when you're shooting, who you're shooting, all the shooting. It's beautiful. Love it. Huge amounts of choice. Does Atlantic Sentinels have choice? Yes, it does have choice. Does it have as much choice as American Tank Ace? No, I don't think it does. It's got a fair amount of choice in the game, but it's an extension of the Hunters. It's an extension of games like that. And if you haven't played the Hunters, Silent Victory is one and the same principle. That it is expanded more choice than you have there, but not to that level that we see in American Tank Ace. Not to detract from it. I do think Atlantic Sentinels is a good game, and I'm going to be showing you that later on because I'm going to do a separate follow-on video where I play through a convoy mission and show you guys how this all works. But let's go over the rest of the gameplay itself, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. So, what is your purpose? Like I said, your purpose is to guard. Now, I know it's kind of squeezing it, trying to get all this in here, but this is a little bit of table space, a little bit of a table hog with this game, and it comes down basically to this map. Now, this map is double-sided. There are two sizes of convoys that you can have, large and small. And one of the things I don't get is it's got large on both sides. I don't want to flip this because I got counters on it, but let's see. Yeah, see? It says large convoy here. And it says large convoy here, but this is the small convoy side, and the other side is the large convoy side. And you can tell because it's wider, so it has more frontage to it, but it has the same amount of side to it. So the convoy was kind of like this, and that's the front of the convoy. So this is the long side. The front is the long side. The rear is the long side. I don't know why. I think that might be a misprint. Maybe this is supposed to say small convoy. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't really think it makes that big of a difference, and it doesn't affect gameplay at all, so it doesn't matter. But you will pick from a selection of 10 different escort groups, and these escort groups will be controlled by your escort group display mat. Makes sense. You will have a selection of destroyers and frigates, cutters, and corvettes. Your destroyers and frigates are your best ones. You can only have up to 4 of those. You can have a couple of cutters, and you can have up to 6 corvettes. So basically, you can fill out the map, but you can't have more than that. You can get more ships. There are charts that you roll on where you can occasionally get more. When it comes to the 10 that you can either pick or randomly select, you have British, Canadian, and American escort groups, and they are all going to vary on what types of ships they're going to have. The different numbers of destroyers, different numbers of corvettes. They might have 3, they might have 4. Same with the destroyers and frigates over here. Some of them will also include bonuses that you can potentially get later. Things like your HFDF radar, CAM, which is that catapult-assisted takeoff, the Hurricane that's on there so it can fight off air attacks, long range air support, and you can even have carrier air support as well. The carrier air support is something you can't start with. You do have to get that later on. I think long range air support is also like that. Besides that, you do have specific radars that can be attached to certain ships. You do start with this group with a Type 271 radar. It's all about extra chances to contact those enemy subs, to figure out where they are, because you can't shoot what you can't see. So things like that HFDF and this Type 271 radar are all about zooming in, figuring out where the enemy ship is so you can drop some depth charges on them. You also have Hedgehogs, special type of attack. Your crews can have different levels of training and experience. They can be all the way from green, which is bad, all the way up to elite, which is really good, and they have extra bonuses and modifiers that apply to them. Normally, you will all start with trained, but you can add green in there, so some of your ships might start lower than just trained. Trained is neutral, no bonuses, no negative modifiers, no positive modifiers. So that's a basic gist of your Escort display mat. There is a spot up in the top left to keep track of which port is yours. You will start at one of two different ports. Since I have a British Escort group selected, I'm going to be starting over here in London. You also have a nice little spot here to keep track of your combat cycle. I'll touch on that a little bit more specifically later, but basically you can have up to 3 cycles of U-boats trying to take you out. You also have a little spot here to keep track of your rank and any potential random events, bonuses like a knock on wood that you can have. You can put those counters up there. Over here onto our operations map, this is where you're going to keep track of the travel boxes. So like any other game of this ilk, you're going to have your travel boxes. You're going to move from one side of the board to the other side of the board, and certain squares can potentially have attacks, and you will refer to your charts to see if you are going to have an encounter and what type of encounter you're going to have. Now, you're not going to have an encounter every time. You might get lucky and have a mission make it all the way across and encounter nothing. Or maybe you just get one U-boat. You do have some squares up here that have the letter C in them. Those refer to different types of German air attacks. They call them the Condor. That's why it has C, and they can only attack you in these travel boxes. So if you roll and get that result, then you will weather that type of attack on those boxes. These 2 gray ones in the center refer to boxes that are outside of any air cover. The only air cover you could have in the air gap is if you have a CVE with you. The circles that you see here are your long-range air support. So depending on which port you're going to, you can have long-range air support, but it will only cover to a certain point. And that, again, is why we have our little bit of an air gap here. Your direction is obviously going to matter, what direction you're going. You got a little spot here in the center and a reversible counter that you can use to keep track of that. And then up here in the upper left, weather is also going to play into the game as it does in all of these different games. Good weather makes it easy. You don't have any negative modifiers. Poor or bad weather will give you negative modifiers and can potentially cause damage to ships. But when it comes to the game proper, let me move this one up just a little bit. This is where you're going to be spending the majority of your gameplay. This is where the fun takes place. This is where the actual attacks are going to happen. So what will happen when you have an attack, right? So when U-boats find you, when U-boats attack, I'm thinking like the National Geographic, U-boats coming in. They have different types of U-boats. You only have Type 7s and Type 9s. Type 7s can attack in wolf packs. Type 9s can only attack singly, all right? So there's not that many of them. So you might encounter a single Type 9 or a handful of the Type 7s that might attack you all at once. You'll obviously roll to determine whether it's day or night when the mission takes place. But again, like I said, there's a combat cycle. This is not like the Hunters or Silent Victory, where you have day or night. Here you are going to have day, night, day, or night, day, night. So you're going to have 3 total cycles if there are U-boats that survive to that point. If no U-boats are around, then you don't have to worry about it. You'll have less cycles. And the first cycle always takes 2 phases. So in a way, it's kind of like 4 cycles, but there's 3 cycles. The U-boats can come in and attack you up to 3 different times. And they're going to attack you around this mat. So you're going to have your ships in the center, and these green squares are where you're going to put your ships. So you will pull your little counters off here that represent your ships, and you're going to decide where to put those. My H-class destroyer, for example, here, this one has the Type 271 radar. So I want to put him on a flank, and I want to put him on a flank because that radar can cover that entire flank. It can warn me of any approaching U-boats coming from that angle. It's an extra chance to detect them. I'm already going to have one chance for my HFDF that does start with this escort group. But there's multiple chances you have to try to contact these U-boats. The U-boats are double-sided, so you can flip them over to a contact. They will be randomly placed on here after you place all of your escorts. So you'll pick all your escorts, and you might want to spread them around and kind of cover all your angles, or you maybe want to focus the flanks. There's also a little box here back at the back. It's called the stragglers box. If you have damaged ships, whether it's your escorts or if you take an attack and some of the convoy gets damaged, they'll pop back here to that damaged stragglers box. They're damaged and they're slower, and those ships will be extra focused. They'll be targeted by those U-boats and any potential air attacks. So you can put an escort back there to help guard them. When you do detect, I'm messing that one up. When you do detect these U-boats, you will flip them over to their detected side in whatever approach they might be in, and then that's when you're going to conduct your attack. And it's very similar to other games of this nature, right, where you're going to have certain bonuses, right? If you've moved your ships, your escorts, then you are going to have to flip them over to their move side because that incurs a negative penalty. But if you've previously detected these, you get a positive modifier. There's modifiers for dates. There's modifiers for different types of radars. There's all these other modifiers that can give you a plus or a minus to your chance to damage the U-boats. When you do attack the U-boat, obviously you're trying to sink them, but you might not always be successful. And really neat over here, there are a couple extra displays so we can keep track of the damage that we're doing to these U-boats. So you see here, we've got our Type 7, we've got our Type 9, and it's very similar to the Hunters where they can take hull damage, they can take flooding damage, they can have specific systems damaged. And the cool part is even if you don't destroy a U-boat, if you just damage it, then it's out of the fight. If it tries to escape and it gets away, well, at least you don't have to worry about it going after your convoy anymore. You've reduced one of those threats. That's only going to come into play when we have those wolf packs and a multitude of U-boats attacking us all at once. But let's say that we have our escorts, a few escorts on there, and they're trying to stop them, but they don't, and a U-boat gets through and it's going to conduct its attack. Well, that's when you're going to take and roll, see whether they're attacking at long range, medium range, close range, and you randomly roll for 3 different targets. You can have large freighters, you can have a tanker, you can have small freighters, and there is charts on the player aids. I won't pull all these out now because it's huge, but there is a player aid that will tell you the specific name and tonnage of the ship. You can also use generics if you just want it simplified and not having to add that extra layer of detail onto the game. But depending on their size, that will determine how many damage points they can take. Like a tanker can take 3 damage points from a U-boat, and then it's sunk. Obviously, you want to prevent that, but you're going to lose some ships along the way, and you will annotate those on your log sheet. And instead of ships being counted for you, right, the freighters being taken out as a bonus like it was in the Hunters, now it's a negative. If you lose those ships, you're losing points. But you do get points for sinking U-boats. So after the U-boats come through and it's done its attack and done whatever damage it's going to do, obviously it's going to try to pull out away again, and then you're going to have another chance to try to attack that U-boat one more time to prevent him from being able to be part of the next cycle. If there is another cycle that's going to happen, try to damage him, see if you can knock him out of the fight. I know this all sounds kind of complex and a lot going on, but remember, like I said, you've got cards to walk you through all of the different counters, and there is an example of play in the back of the rule book that walks you through how all of this is done, and it'll help you learn the game. But none of these games are hard by any means. You play through a convoy or two, and you're going to have a pretty good grasp of it. Of course, all of this is just a brief overview. Like I said, I'm going to have a follow-on video where I play through a convoy mission, let you guys see how all this plays out, see if we can sink ourselves some U-boats before they get to our convoy, and let you see what the game is really all about. But I think for those who are into this style, it's pretty much going to be a no-brainer, especially if you love the Hunters or you like Silent Victory. If those two are in your collection, you're going to get Atlantic Sentinels. It is so cool to be able to play this from the other side of the coin, to now not be in fear of the Escort, but to be the Escort. You're going to bring the damage, bring the pain, right? They're trying to sneak their way in. Instead of you trying to be all stealthy, now it doesn't matter. You can fire willy-nilly and just go balls out and not have to worry about trying to slink your way out. You're firing everything. You've got destroyers, you've got corvettes, you're dropping depth charges left, right, and center, blowing up the sea. Cool as hell to be able to see this from the other side. There are some optional rules that you can add to it. Things like limited depth charges. Traditionally, the game does give you unlimited depth charges, but there are counters that you can add to the game that will give you a certain amount, or if you want to add different levels to the U-boats, right? So if you want them to have different skill levels, there are counters in the game, so they're color-coded, and they can tell you whether these are trained or elite or veteran U-boats that are coming in, and they might get certain bonuses. I wouldn't start off using these, but after you've played a convoy or two, if it's a little easy and you feel like you want something a little bit more meaty, a little harder, then you can add those veterancy levels to the U-boats to add the teeth to the game. And like I said, that's not even touching on the fact that you can also combine this with the Hunters and kind of play both games at the same time and let them play off each other. You're going to need a buttload of table space if you do it, but the option is there. So obviously, I'd recommend Atlantic Sentinels. I love it. I've always loved games like this. I will always get games like this. Pretty much anything Mr. Smith puts out ends up in my collection. So it's probably always going to be a recommend. He hasn't let me down yet. And I'm British Tank Ace, release it. I must have it now. I want that one. I love American Tank Ace. And it's so cool to have now Escorts and getting to play this from the other side. These are my dumb fun, right? These are just my, if I have an evening off and I don't want to get into something immediate, like I love the Fate of All. It's over on my table right now. But that one's a brain burner. You really have to kind of focus into it. This is the game that I can sit back, have something on in the background, chuck some dice, and just have fun with it and not have to get just overly complex. Just have a fun game. All of the games like this kind of fall in that category. And Atlantic Sentinels is a worthy addition, right, to games like that, to games of this genre. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. You guys stay tuned. Like I said, I will have a little playthrough. We're going to do convoy. We're going to drop some depth charges. We're going to fire some torpedoes. See if I can make it from one side of the Atlantic to the other without losing any ships. I should have that up in the next couple of weeks, so you guys stay tuned for that. All right, that's going to be it for me. Y'all take care, and I will catch you in the next one.